hand it to Fausto.
Thank you very much. Well, once again, this is Fausto Pupo, Senior Educational Consultant from Anthology, and today we're going to see how to create and set up tests in Learn Ultra. Okay, I'm going to turn off my camera now. I just wanted to say hi. And there we go. Okay, this is our typical Learn Ultra course, the one we've been using for the training sessions. And today we're going to see how to create tests. As always, I'm going to cover a little bit of the AI assistant, design assistant. However, we will have a dedicated session so that we can further explore the AI design assistant in all of its glory, really, because there's quite a few very interesting things that you can do with it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I want to add a question bank. So the quickest way to create one would be to use the AI Design Assistant. So I'll do that. In order to create, generate, or edit question banks, existing question banks, you want to go to the Details and Actions menu here on the right, scroll down a little bit, and click on the last option. Okay, question banks. I'll click on Manage Banks. And there, as you can see, okay, this one is blank. So I have a few options. As always in Ultra, you want to click on the plus sign. And then as you can see, you can click on New to create a new one from scratch, or import from file. Okay, so if you have a file that you have exported either from Learn Ultra or Learn Original, or one that was specifically created for Learn by a publisher, then that's the option you want to use. Also, and this is brand new, if you have exported a question bank from a different LMS using the QTI 2.1 format or standard, like from Moodle, for example, then you can also now import those files and those question banks directly into Ultra. However, okay, let me show off the AI Design Assistant a little bit. And I'm going to click on Auto Generate so that we have some material for our test. As always, there are two ways in which you can prompt the AI, by using a description or by selecting course item. So that's what I'm going to do. I believe that I put that on Unit 1, and we should have, yes, we have an Ultra document about the potential of artificial intelligence in education, so I'll use that one here. Select items. I could have selected multiple things. And then as you can see, there are 6 different question types that you can generate. Essay, fill in the blanks, jumbled sentence, that is also brand new. Matching, multiple choice, and true false. If I leave it at inspire me, then it's going to give me a combination of different question types. However, for question banks, it is probably a good idea and a recommended practice to make sure that all of the questions in the question bank have more or less the same level of difficulty and complexity, because since they're going to be randomly picked and displayed to students, I mean, if someone gets mostly essay and matching questions and someone else gets mostly true, false, and multiple choice, then probably things would not be very fair. I'm going to go with multiple choice. Level of complexity seems about right. And I'm going to generate 10 questions. Okay, I'm only going to be using 5 for the test, but let's generate 10. I could generate up to 20. Then after that, remember, advanced options are used when you want the output to be in a different language, which is ideal for second or foreign language courses. And I'm just going to click on generate. Let's give it a moment. Shouldn't take very long at all. Here they are. Now remember, as always, this is auto-generated content, and of course it needs to be checked for accuracy and bias. Here, since we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to select all of them. But of course, in a real situation, you probably want to go over each one, see, and pick the ones that make the most sense or that you find the most appropriate. You can always edit the questions afterwards. So I'm going to add the 10 questions, and let's give it a name that we can remember. So just click on the little pencil here. Artificial intelligence. So let's call it AI in education. Okay. And well, that's ready. And now let's go ahead and create our test. I'm going to close the question banks, and I'm going to go to, let's do it here, Unit 1. And I'll put it right at the beginning so we can find it easily. You click on Create, and then we're going to focus on the second category, which is Assessment, and tests are the very first option. Let's call this Unit 1 Quiz. Okay. Normally, you would keep it hidden from students until it's ready to be released. However, I will also simulate a student submitting the test, so I'll make it visible from the start. Oh, it needs content first. So we'll do that in a moment. Is there AI assistance in grading? That's a question on the chat. Right now, not yet. Okay, but pretty sure that they're working on it as we speak. So the only assistance you get in grading is the ability to generate rubrics, which is very helpful and time-saving, but it does not yet analyze essay questions, for instance, or AI conversations as well. Okay, so this is your content section here on the left, and the settings on the right, as usual. And then you have a few more tabs that I will show you in a moment. I'm going to click on the plus sign, and as you can see, you have quite a few options. You could automatically generate questions directly on the test or add a question pool, which is what question banks are also known as, okay, in Ultra. And then you have the different types of questions. Also, you have the ability to upload questions from file. Okay, all of these are for you to create questions from scratch. You also have the ability to reuse questions from other tests, add text. Let's say if you have a more complex test with different sections, then you can add page breaks in between the different sections and some text for an introduction or instructions or a sample answer, maybe when you have different question types and you want students to know how they are expected to answer. Okay, there is a question here on the chat. Did I hear correctly that the maximum amount is 20 questions? Yes, you did. However, if you need more, you can generate more than once. And then when selecting your sources, if you select more than one question bank for a specific section of your test, it will effectively behave as a larger question bank. So if I generate two sets of 20 questions, and then I select those from the sources at the same time, it will effectively be treated as a 40 question bank. So I hope that helps. There. So I am going to add a question pool here. And here you have, okay, the different sources. And there are two types of sources. Any assessments that you have created already. So for example, in quiz one, I have 3 questions. But if I select multiple sources, as you can see, they will behave and be treated as one bigger question bank. There is another question. Can we use AI to create questions that are aligned with course objectives? Yes, you can. However, the actual alignments would be done at the question level. But yes, of course, you can certainly use course objectives as an input or part of the input for your question banks as well. More on that on the on the dedicated AI session that we will have. I'm going to clear, okay, all of this because I actually want to use this one here. Okay. AI in education. This is the question bank that I just generated. I'm going to select all of them. However, in real life, you will have previously gone over the different questions and edited anything that you think needs improving. So I'm going to add those questions, and this is what my question pool is going to look like. From here, I can tell it, okay, how many points each question should be worth. By default, it is always 1, and then, of course, you can change it. And then you select the number of questions to display to students. So here I have 10, which is the total, but in this case, I just wanted to show them, let's say, 5 of those questions. Remember, this is just an example, but you can use, of course, more or fewer questions, and you can edit the individual points for the questions within this question pool. I'm going to save it. And as you can see here, 5 out of 10 questions in this pool are displayed randomly to students. If you want to view all of them, just click on View Questions. Here they are. And if you want to adjust something, all you need to do, as always, is click on the ellipsis, the 3 dots icon, to either edit or regrade a question. And then, as you can see, okay, here I have the ability to add options, add automated feedback, okay, allow partial and negative credit, etc. But we're going to take a closer look at this in a moment, okay? And also, okay, from here, you can also align these questions. All you need to do is click on the 3 dots, align with goals. Then you will be shown the different types of the different sets of program, course, and institution goals that you could have. Sorry. Analyze and compare alternative solutions to computing problems, communicate effectively both orally and in writing, or whatever. Okay, these are just some examples. So if you want to make any alignments, just select here one or more. I'm just going to, I know this is not related, but just to show you how it's done. And submit. And as you can see, your alignments are there. And you will have this icon, okay, which looks like a little trophy here, indicating that it's being linked. Okay. So we have that part. And now I'm going to add, well, the goals and standards actually have to be created or uploaded by someone with access to that tool. For faculty, instructors in general. Okay, all you need to do is click on the three dots, edit, and then, okay, not the question bank, now the individual questions. Okay, and select from the available. That's a reply to Marjorie's question on the chat. However, in order to create those goals, okay, let me briefly going to open. Oh, this is Facebook. No, I don't want that one. Okay, that's it. Actually, the tool that is used, okay, you go to the tools menu, and here you have the goals tool, okay? But someone has to upload or create those goals first. And this is a rather recent feature, which now you can generate reports based on goals performance. Okay, so that's also very useful, and it was added recently. Okay, so let's add one more question. Okay, this time I'm going to generate one directly here. I will select the same course item because I want to show you how what different options are when setting up a question. Okay, I'm going to generate four. Let's make this a little more difficult. And the difference is in the previous example, I generated a question bank and then I inserted that question bank in the test. Here, I'm generating questions directly on the test. So here I have a fill in the blanks question, another one. Here I have a matching question. So this is a good way in which you can become familiar with the different question types. I'll use the multiple choice one for this example. Add one to the assessment. Now, please remember that Blackboard help is contextual. So if you're in the middle of creating a test and you click on the help icon, that little question mark here on the left, on the right, sorry, at the bottom, and click on Blackboard support and then on Blackboard help. You may have fewer options depending on how it's being configured by your system admin, but you will always have access to Blackboard help. So if you click on help, Blackboard help from within a test, okay, then it'll take you, oops, sorry, my browser knows where I am. So let me switch back to English here. Okay, you have everything and anything about. Okay, it tells you what you can do, more on adding questions, more on adding question tools, more on reusing questions, so forth. There's a question from Sal here. Are the goals for only created questions or can it be used with a test bank from the vendor? If it is a test bank from the vendor that you can import onto Ultra, you should be able to make the alignments. Okay, if it is imported as a question bank or as a test. But if it is like a quiz from Cengage, then, then there is a connection, obviously, but this is a tool hosted by, could be Cengage, Pearson, Longman, whatever. In that case, you could make the alignment with the test, but not with individual questions. So it will greatly depend on how the question bank from the vendor was exported and made available as a tool. Okay, let me close this. And here we have our additional question. And let me show you the different options. To begin with, okay, here you have the correct answer. What is one of the primary concerns regarding the implementation of AI in education? You have four options. However, if you want to edit the question, all you need to do is click on the three dots, as always. Here, you could align it with a goal. Now, about aligning with goals, there are two ways, okay, in which you can align an assessment instrument. One of them is, if we're talking about a test, you can align with individual specific test questions, which is the approach I would recommend, because within the same test, you may be using questions that assess or cover different specific goals. So this would give you a more accurate view or snapshot of how people are doing. You could also align the whole test at once. But then again, in order for that to really work, you would have to make sure that everything on the test is aligned with the same goals, okay? So even though, and we will see that in much more detail in a moment, you could align the test with one or more goals, doing the alignment with individual questions gives you, as I said before, a much more accurate report and idea of how students are doing with the different goals. Also, if this were an assignment or a graded discussion or a graded learning journal, then even though you could align goals with the actual assignment, discussion, or journal, I would rather use a rubric and do the alignments directly with specific criteria within the rubric. That, again, would give you a clearer idea because, different criteria can be linked to different specific objectives. So you have that level of flexibility, I would say. However, my recommendation would be try to always align either with specific questions within the test or with specific criteria within a rubric. Okay, so I'll click on the three dots to see what options I have. I could edit. I could duplicate the question if I want to have a similar question and just make a few changes, align with a goal, or delete it altogether. Let's click on edit. So as you can see, okay, I could add images, embed videos, upload files, or any other input or source that students may need. You can add here. No? You have the standard content editing tool here. And then you can also, okay, you also have the same features, okay, for the options. So instead of text, you could actually use images as options here, which, I have an English as a foreign language teaching background from a few decades ago. So in language teaching, sometimes it is a good idea, instead of an actual text-based question, you could have a clip, an audio clip, or like a short conversation or a description, oral description of something. And then they have to click on the picture that is being described, for example. So you could have, instead of text, video, audio, images, anything you need really. And it's very easy all you need to do is click here, okay, and then add whatever it is you want to add. Also, if you're teaching math, you have access to the math formula editor, which is okay. It's been quite a few years since I took any math courses. To be honest, the closest thing would be statistics during my doctorate and master studies. But okay, if you're teaching math, this is going to make a lot more sense to you than to me. So you can mark, okay, additional correct options. You could add as many options as you want by clicking here, or you could delete options by clicking on the little trash can icon on the right. You can also move things around. It's just drag and drop by clicking here, okay? What else can we do? Okay, you can also provide automated feedback. Okay, and you have two options here, one for correct answers and one for incorrect and partial credit answers as well. Once again, okay, could be any format here. You can Marjorie is asking whether the options can be randomized. Yes, indeed. And I'll show you that in a moment when we get to the settings. So for the feedback, okay, you want to be you want your feedback to be as helpful and meaningful as possible. So if it's correct, you want to acknowledge that it is correct and maybe, okay, briefly explain why, because may have happened to you sometimes when you're taking a test, like multiple choice, etc., or something similar, true, false. You kind of know that it is correct, but you can't quite remember exactly why. And that is your subconscious brain telling you, I've seen this somewhere, but I don't know where. So this could be a good opportunity for just-in-time teaching, as they call it. So because you're reinforcing or refreshing that. And then for incorrect feedback, incorrect answer feedback, of course you want to acknowledge that it's not correct, but also this is a good opportunity to point the student in the right direction, maybe give them a link to some online resource with additional information or a video or a page from the textbook that you're using, etc. Okay, rather than spoon feeding the student, that could make it more meaningful. Okay, so here I'm just going to leave it like that, okay? But I just wanted to show you where the automated feedback option is. Another thing, let's say for a moment, okay, this is the only correct option here. But let's choose another one, okay? Just to show you what happens when you have more than one. If we leave it like this, and this is worth, let's say, 10 points, in order for the student to get the 10 points, they have to click or select the both correct options here. Okay, it's either right or wrong. No partial credit is provided. However, if you want to have a bit more flexibility, you can click here to allow partial and negative credit. Now, by default, they're going to be randomly distributed. So if you have two correct options, each one would be worth 50% of whatever number of points you have assigned to this question. So as you can see, this one here, they get 50, minus 50%, minus 50%, and 50%. So if they choose the first and the second one, they get 0 because 5 minus 5, that's what it gets. If they select these two, again, they get 0 and so forth. And they need to select these two and nothing else in order to get the 10 points. Now, this affects only the score for this question. So if they choose this one and this one, that would effectively be a minus 10, but it's not going to propagate and affect the overall grade for this test. Unless you want to make it a bit more competitive, maybe this is a very high stakes test, and then you can allow negative overall score. In which case, okay, the students will know because this will be displayed in the information section of the test. And here, if the student gets a minus 5, that minus 5 is going to affect the overall score for the test. Okay? So you can use negative percentages to subtract points for incorrect answers. And if you allow negative overall score, that is going to, if they get a negative score on a question, then that affects the overall grade. If you don't, it only affects this question. So even if they get a minus 5, it's just like in this question, they get no points at all. So yet another feature that enhances or provides you with flexibility when grading your test. Another thing that you could do, okay, is to indicate that a question is an extra credit question. In which case, okay, it doesn't affect the overall or the maximum number of points. If I save, let me save this one here. So you can tell that it's extra credit because you have this purple medal-like icon here. Students will know, but they will also be able to see it. It is not added to the maximum points. However, okay, this would allow students to effectively get, it would be possible for them to get more than 50 points on this test. Okay, because they have, if they get everything right, they earn their 50 points, and they get this one right completely or partially, then they could get 55 or 60. Again, okay, more flexibility when grading. And you can provide the opportunity for students to improve their scores, okay, without affecting the official intended number of points for a test. Okay, and as I said before, all you need to do if you want to add something anywhere on the test, just go to one of the available spaces or slots here. It'll turn purple and it'll show you this plus sign. And then you can add any type of question. All right, so, okay, if you want to learn more about question types and how to create tests, etc., let me share the link with you here on the chat, okay? So then you can explore, okay, with ease, everything and anything about tests. Let's take a look at the, oh, as you can see, you can print the test, okay? Important things to note, an answer key will be automatically generated and printed with the test. If using randomized questions or question pools, a new version of the test and answer key will be generated with each print. Now, let's take a look at the settings. As always, all you need to do is look for the little gear icon. And these are your options. The first one is the due date. Just give me a second. I want to say something. Okay. So the first one is the due date. Okay. By default, it'll be the following day. However, of course, you can change that. Let's say it'll be Monday, but well, that's kind of late. 6 p.m. Now, remember that the due date and time specifically will always be displayed in the correct time zone where the user is located. So right now, to me, in my part of the world, is 9:35 a.m. So that's what it's going to consider. But, oh yes, actually you can. I'll show you what it looks like for a student in a moment, Ruth. Ruth was asking on the chat whether it can be restricted, test printing can be restricted. So I'll show you how that works in a moment when I go in as a student. Or you also have the option, okay, for no due date. Now, prohibit late submissions and prohibit new attempts after the due date. This one here means that after 6 p.m. on the 21st, students will not be able to start a new attempt. But if you prohibit late submissions, it means that on the 21st at 6 p.m., any in-progress attempts will be submitted automatically. Okay, so if they started 30 minutes before or 5 minutes before, doesn't matter. At 6 p.m. exactly, this is going to be saved, whatever progress students have made and submitted. Class conversations, I think if I remember correctly, in a previous session I talked about them. They look and work like discussions. However, and they're an excellent tool for students to be able to interact, okay, and collaborate and cooperate and ask and answer questions. But unless this were a formative test, I would probably not want them to interact too much during the test. So I'm not going to turn those on. Presentation options, okay? One that I like is to display one question at a time. Okay, so it's going to be more like a slideshow, if you will, rather than having students scroll up and down. It's a test. And I find it helps them focus better since they can see one question at a time. If you enable the display one question at a time option, then you have the ability to prohibit backtracking, meaning the student will not be able to go back to a previous question. Personally, I don't like to do that because you know how it is. Sometimes when you're taking a test, it's almost inevitable that some questions would seem easier to you than other questions. And then, okay, very common, I would say, instinctive test taking strategy is to first try to answer those questions that you find easier. And then take your time, go back and take your time with the more difficult questions. If you prohibit backtracking, then they would not be able to do that. Of course, they would know because that piece of information would also be visible to them. But then again, why make their lives more difficult? But if you need to or would like to, then you can, of course, always prohibit backtracking. And answering Marjorie's question now, under presentation options, you can randomize questions and you can also randomize answers. Okay, you have both options. Here, since it's basically a question, this is coming from a question pool, I don't need to randomize questions, they will be randomized anyways. And then I do want the last question to appear at the end because it's an extra credit question. So I do have the ability to randomize both questions and answers. Here, I don't need to randomize questions, but randomized answers is always a good idea. Okay, I did not create any page breaks, so the ability to randomize pages is not active here. Okay, but it could be if I had different sections here, if I had added page breaks. Let's continue. Formative tools. Is this formative or summative? Formative, meaning that this is probably not intended to have an impact on the actual course grade, and it's more like a short quiz at some point during a lesson, basically intended for you and for your students to see whether they have learned what they were expected to learn about this topic or about this unit or about this chapter, or if many students had a difficult time, struggled a little bit, then you can see that and do something about it, maybe have a schedule of review or give them some additional resources or video, etc., so that they can reinforce that without it affecting their score. Okay, so if it's formative, however, okay, assessment instrument being formative does not automatically exclude it from any grade calculations. You have to do that on the gradebook settings, and When we have a session on the gradebook, I'll show you that. So it's not going to be formative here. I'm just going to leave it as normal, but it doesn't affect anything functionally on the test. Okay, grading and submissions. Okay, the grade category, these are the standard grade categories in Ultra. Assignment, form, test, discussion, journal, exam, homework, presentation, and quiz. I'm calling this a quiz, so that's the one I will select. Basically, grade categories are there to make it easier for you to set up your grade book, okay, and have it calculate your course overall grade. No, it's Patricia is asking if you can randomize the answers for specific questions. No, it's for the whole test, entire test. But it affects multiple choice questions only. All right. So it's a quiz. By default, they will have one attempt. However, and we saw this is similar to how it is done for assignments. You can have multiple attempts, in which case you can indicate how you want, okay, the grade to be calculated. It's the same exactly as with assignments. So I'm going to leave it at one attempt only. Grade using points. You could have a different grade schema. You could use a different grade schema, of course. Now, there are a few additional options here. Okay, anonymous grading. So it could be possible to hide students' names, in which case you would have to disable the automatic grade posting option here, which is a default for tests. Okay, if you uncheck this box, you will have to post grades manually. You can post them all at once, of course, but then you can hide students' names. You also have delegated grading. So if you have a very large class and you have assistants, etc., then okay, this is a useful tool. This one here is important. Okay, assessment results. What will students be able to see and when? Submission view. The submission refers to the student's ability to see the questions, the options, and what they answered. Okay, not whether it is correct or incorrect or what score they got, etc. Just what they did on the test. By default, it is available right after submission. However, you have some additional options. Could be after the individual grade has been posted, after the due date, after all grades are posted. I like this one here because it will give them access, but once everybody has finished and all grades have been posted. So they do not have the ability to enter, review, revisit questions, and maybe if there's still some time left, share or provide feedback to classmates, which would be wrong, but sometimes it happens. So I would recommend after all grades are posted, or maybe on a specific date. Okay, a couple days afterwards, just in case someone needed an extension or something like that. But let's say for this example, I'm going to click right after submission because I want to show you what it looks like. But remember, okay, for added security, I would change that. Then show automatic feedback if provided. Okay, you can also enable that. Okay, I have a little something here. Yeah, there's something wrong here. So, well, you select that, and then don't forget to save. For some reason, it's not letting me save. It's a little bug or something. Murphy's Law doing its thing. Okay. So here I have display one question at a time. We have a due date, randomize answers, test one, quiz, post-assessment grades automatically. You have submission view available after submission. Question scores, you can also change this. Okay. Okay. Yeah, now it's working. So do you want to show question scores? I would say after individual grade is posted, just to show you what it looks like. And do you want to show correct answers? I would, okay? But then if you're planning to reuse these questions, maybe not for now. For all of that, for all of those, probably the safest approach is after all grades are posted. But here I'm just going to go with individual grades so I can show you what it looks like. Don't forget to save. What else do we have? Assessment security, you can add an access code. Okay, you can change it at any time. You can copy it and share it with students. A location restriction, you would, if needed, you would have to coordinate this with your IT department. And now you could add, probably you should add a time limit. By default, it'll be 60 minutes, but of course, for this test, I would say 15 minutes is more than enough, probably. Now, what should happen after the 15 minutes? Work is automatically saved and submitted when time expires, which is the default setting. However, you could give students extra time to work after the time limit expires. If you select that, you can indicate whether they should have 50% more time, 100% more time, or unlimited extra time. Okay, but then you can see how long it took them and maybe deduct a few points if you want to. Personally, okay, I think that how much time they are given, how much time they have, is also part of a criteria um, used when designing the test. So I would enforce this, and then if someone has a specific need or condition or situation, I would give them an extension, maybe, or I would give them some accommodation regarding time limit on an individual basis. Is there extra time order for students with accommodations? For students with accommodations, Marjorie is asking on the chat, yes, it is automatic, regardless of what you put here. So if this is 15 minutes and work will be automatically saved, but let's say one of your students, Jon Snow, has accommodation with 50% additional time, then that student will get an additional 7.5 minutes here margin. Okay. Goals and standards align with goals. Once again, you could align the whole test with goals. However, I think it's a lot better and more accurate to do the alignments with individual questions, okay? Because this, on the same test, you could be measuring different things, different objectives, and you want to get a clear snapshot there. You can't create groups for a time assessment. You could enable the originality report. I would if I had any essay questions here, but I don't. It's all multiple choice, so no need for that. And of course, here, okay, as always, I always recommend, it's a good idea to provide a description so that students know what it is. Okay, you have up to 750 characters. And then once you're done, just save. Let's make it visible to students to show you what they will see. Okay, Unit 1 quiz, and this is in Unit 1, which is visible. Start preview. Okay, Unit 1. Here's my quiz. Now it tells me what the due date is and time and the time limit. So if I click on it, I'm going to see all the information. Assessment due date and time, time limit, automatic submission, 1 attempt. Maximum points, 50 points, extra credit available, 10 points. Start the attempt, asks me if I'm sure I want to start the timer. And here I have the timer. Okay, this assessment contains questions that allow partial and negative credit. So it's completely transparent. It always tells me all the information. Dismiss. And as you can see here, to address a previous question on the chat, only the instructor can print the test. Students don't have that ability. So the idea is for the instructor to be able to print it as a PDF file, maybe to share it offline. However, students do not have ability to do that for just for security, I guess. All right. So I'm just going to click on things randomly, okay, which means I'm probably going to fail this test like big time, but for the sake of time. Now you have the timer here, tells you how much time you have left. No, it doesn't. Marjorie, Blackboard does not prevent screenshots, but if you're using this in conjunction with some additional proctoring tool, then you have enhanced features like the ability to lock down the browser, prevent students to use an additional screen, or for taking screenshots. Nevertheless, you know how it is. I mean, they can always take a picture of the screen with their camera. Of course, that would be time consuming anyways. And in that case, you could have students turn on their webcam during the test, and then you can also prevent that from happening. It's not a native feature, but it can be enabled using a proctoring tool. So it tells me, okay, how many I have left. I can continue. I can also navigate using these controls here. I could filter, go to only unanswered questions if I want to focus, or if permanently watching how much time I have left makes me nervous, I can always hide it. It would. Here I don't have responders. Ruth is asking how to link responders lockdown browser with Ultra. Okay, the initial settings, configuration has to be done for all courses at once, okay, by your admin, and then it would appear, if enabled. Remember when I went over the settings, okay, it would appear there as another element in the menu. Okay, another option. So I'm just going to keep clicking on things randomly so I can flunk this test and show you what it. I would be surprised if I get any points. I'm not even reading the questions here. Okay, this is the extra credit one, I think. No, this is the extra credit one. Oh, by the way, the ability, students have the ability by default to add additional content, okay, like comments, etc. When creating the test, you can turn that off. It's a very last option. However, I like to leave it on because this is a very good way, practical way in which I can get feedback from students. What if they found a typo or something? Okay, so I always like to keep this line, okay, of communication with the students here. All right, so I'm done. Oh no, I have one more question left, I think. Okay, unanswered questions only. Yes, I forgot to answer one. So if I try to submit, it'll tell me, hey, by the way, there's a question that you have not yet answered. Okay, so I can cancel. And then once I'm ready, oh, I can also see that it's aligned with a couple of goals. Submit. Am I sure? Yes, I am. I get a receipt, which I can download and save. I also get it on my email. Oh, I'm surprised I got 20 points. So remember, I left everything visible. So as a student now, I can view the submission. and everything is visible, but as I showed you before, you could restrict some or all of this. Okay, this is what it looks like. And now let me exit. I'll save this just in case, this data. And I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. Okay, if we do not have any questions, what I just realized is that I left the yesterday's meeting a little earlier, but this doesn't have anything to do with the training actually, so you can stop the recording now. But I thought I was going to have a